When you're looking for more and there's no place to go, it's a sequels only bonus show. It's not about sequels this time, you know, it's a sequels only bonus show. Doug and his pals, well, they know what to do, talking about movies without a part two. Looking for more and there's no place to go, it's a sequels only bonus show. Talking to stars with Doug Ditsold, it's a sequels only bonus show. Sequels only bonus show.
Hey there, Doug here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Happy Monday. I know Monday's the worst day of the week, but we know it is. So we're going to make it so much better by giving you this amazing bonus interview with someone I went to high school with, someone I graduated with, and that's Hollywood producer Nicole Aguilar. We talked about how she started working into it. We had class together in high school, but we never talked about interests. She loved film. We talked about how she pursued it right after high school. She wanted to get out of Dodge, which I totally understand. And we just talked about her journey and a lot of things along the way, and how she got to work on shows like Big Little Lies, starring Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman. So amazing stories. And we talked about other things and other passions she had. So there's NikkiNurtures.com, which is her website. Super inspirational. She has some books that she's writing, one that she's working on right now. And I'll put all of her social media accounts and her website in the notes so you could check it all out. She was amazing. We had a lot of fun. It was cool catching up because I can only see her from a distance on social media, but she's super inspirational. And I love being able to catch up with her. It's the first time we've talked face to face and not in comments on social media in years. So without further ado, here is Nicole Aguilar. Hey.
Look at your background.
It's all you. I do it for everyone, so why not?
That's so rad. Thank you. I feel like I need another light.
Oh, nice.
There we go.
Sweet. This is awesome. You Freddy Krueger-esque.
I did. I told you I might show up in costume, and
I like it. It's better than I did. I just took an old shirt and put knife slits on it and stuff.
Yeah. This was my attempt at the slutty Halloween costume, but I'm so short that it's just a respectable dress.
That's sweet. So I don't know the last time, so we'll just start right now. So I can't even tell you the last time that did you ever stay in town after high school?
No, I packed up and left 2 weeks after I graduated, just kind of on a wing and a prayer.
That's rad. So we'll start from there. So growing up, we went to South Plainfield, New Jersey. So you did drama and all that, right?
Yeah.
And sang.
I was super into the arts. I tell everybody that out here that thinks I'm cool that I'm I lettered in marching band. So I don't know if there's a cool bone in my body, but I did marching band. I did regular band, choir, drama. I was, always in the arts, and I was a film nerd.
Nice.
So
there's a lot of cool people in the marching band. Tom Kazula, Basil, Bubnick, Lamai.
Yeah, for sure. There were a handful of us that were pretty rad.
So from there, what did you do? Where'd you go to school, or did you just go right out there and?
So I decided to go to film school, and I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia.
Oh, sweet. Why Georgia?
They had one of the best film programs in the country other than NYU. They were, ranked really high. And I don't know if you've ever been to Savannah, but
we love it.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
And, it's just such a rad little town. And, it was a great experience in the film department there. And I concentrated in producing and screenwriting and, taking all the other classes like you would for cinematography and lighting and field and, all that. But I really loved it. And, like I said, 2 weeks after I graduated, I was kind of deuces, New Jersey, we're done.
That's great. It's probably the best thing you could have done. Savannah is we stopped there when we moved out to Portland the second time, and it was so cool. And then we always watched Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and you just there's something about that city, and not a lot of stuff is set there. It's such a funky, cool town.
Yeah. Oh, and I love Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And I feel like whenever I'm like, homesick for Savannah, I watch Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So how many years were you in? So is it 4 years?
4 years. And then I've been out in LA for 11.
Sweet. So what was your first step? So obviously, like some of the people I talk to, they're like, I want to try acting, and they like fall into it, or they're just like they knew somebody and they started writing because they were English majors. So like you being dedicated going to school for it, what was your first step going out there? Did you have contacts from going to school at Savannah?
A couple, but not enough, I'd say. And it was kind of a wing and a prayer, as many of my college friends did. We're just like, that's the place to be. So we're going to go and we're going to figure it out. And I think, like many people, I started off as a PA, production assistant on set. So I did, some freelance work and wound up landing in an office setting, Skip Film, which I don't think that they're still open because the owner of the company now is like the CFO for El Rey Network.
Oh, okay.
But, I worked with Skip Chasen. He's just an awesome editor. And they primarily did trailer and TV creative. So they're the people that cut all the spots together creatively. And then they had a small reality TV section that I wound up being able to transition from being like basically an assistant to post-production assistant for them in reality. And after that, I went to another trailer company and I was hired on as an associate producer. So I was able to kind of run some more low-key theatrical campaigns. I did Scary Movie 5.
Oh, wow. I just watched Scary Movie 4 because that's our next movie. Look at that, Scary Movie 5.
Yeah, the highlight of my career, maybe. I don't know.
So just to backtrack, so like when you're doing like the PA, do you remember like the first thing you PA'd on? You said it was a show?
So funnily enough, it was before the time that there was like tons of internet content.
Yeah.
So it was a small sort of, there's shorts of internet wellness type of videos or internet reality sort of things. And it was kind of like a new niche. And it was for MSN.
Oh, cool.
And then I did work on Celebrity Holiday Homes on HGTV.
Was there anybody that you were on set for that or?
Yeah, I wasn't on set PA and it was in Holly Robinson Pete's house.
Oh, yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah. So they came in, with a designer and it was like the middle of the summer in Los Angeles and we're setting up a Christmas tree and not to give away all the Hollywood secrets, but it was probably fucking July.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did that. I think there was one other, it's like kind of a blur, a commercial when I was in Savannah. And on-set stuff is a beast. Like the hours are long, but the good thing about that is like once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
So once I started to transition into those more, office jobs, it's like, oh, I have to keep my cell phone on 24 hours a day.
No, I was trying to remember the first time that I was like, man, when did I know Nicole like worked in LA or did anything like that? And I wrote down, and this is like way after, but now I remember you just mentioned that. It was like a dog show, right? Wasn't it like some kind of animal show?
So I did, it was probably, I think it was 4 years ago. I had a little stint up in the Bay Area and there's a small production company up there called Indigo Films.
Oh yeah. That's
and
what it was.
I wound up working on Nat Geo Wild shows. So I did, World's Greatest Dogs, dogs all shapes and sizes, Unlikely Animal Friends. And it's actually a lot harder than it seems. Like everyone watching it's probably like, oh, you just like go out and you shoot these like cute little animals. But when you think about it, like it's National Geographic and all of your statements made in that show need to be fact checked. So that was part of my job, was to go through the script and annotate everything. And then you hand it into their legal department and they go, okay, this is fine. You have to take this line out, or, you know, find another source for this and we'll let it pass. And, you know, it was a huge learning experience. And it's nice to work on stuff like that, where the network and the studio have such a high bar for what they're putting out on television that like, even if it's World's Greatest Dogs, all of that information was vetted.
Pun intended. But no, it's true. That's cool that you like, that's pretty wild. So you had to make sure, because other shows don't do that. Like I interviewed people at, like, one girl had like a small bit part on not Grey's Anatomy. And she said like her sister's a nurse, and she's like, the lines in the show like were not like what nurses say, like the phrases and stuff. It's funny how that happens. Even like when you watch a movie and you're like, all right, wait, that cup was just like halfway full. And it's weird how those things pass, but it's crazy for a show like that. They're like, hey, it better be exact.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, you know, it was a great opportunity, and I really liked my little stint up there. And, you know, it's a freelance stuff. So in between the Nat Geo shows, they would try to keep me busy so that I was employed the entire time, so that when the Nat Geo show came back, they would just shift me over. So I wound up doing some like post coordinating for Sex Sent Me to the Slammer.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I heard Sex Sent Me to the ER, but that's crazy. Slammer.
Yeah, you know, it's just like a bunch of people having sex in public and getting arrested. And, I came in on the back end and they're like, oh, I don't know if we have room to fit you in the credits. And I'm like, that's fine.
So so you have credits, obviously. It's on IMDb. What is it? What name is it under? Is it just your name? I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, I'm just Nicole Aguilar. I don't have an IMDb page.
So
I probably should. Yeah, but yeah, I have credits all over the place.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I remember the one was like Little Big Lies, right?
Oh yeah, that was.
And I was like, I remember all these people saying something, so I'm like, that's her name, and I was like, oh, maybe she changed it for something, but because usually they tag people in it, but yeah, you should make one so you have everything on there.
I absolutely should, and like go through the Rolodex of things that I've worked on, because I just did another podcast for the University of Houston's communication department, and they're like, awesome. What have you worked on? And I'm like, a million things, and I can remember 3.
Yeah, no, that's true. And some things you wouldn't even believe wouldn't be on your IMDb, because I interviewed a casting director. He had like 11 things. It's an interview I'm putting out in 2 weeks. Probably the coolest guy. I like hounded him since I first started this. And in the beginning, he was like, I don't do interviews. And again, like a casting director, you can't Google them and see what they look like. But this guy was amazing. He finally gave in because he said Police Academy 6 was like the worst experience of his career. So he's like, since I like that movie, because I wrote that in the email, he gave me an hour. And like legit, he was like, it was like 15 minutes ago, and I'm like, oh my God, what should I ask about? So I asked about like Seagal. And he was like, all right, time's up. And I'm like, oh man. He's like, hey, that was a lot of fun, but I don't want to do any more. I'm like, oh, damn it. But those are the people, like he told me his IMDb has like 12 things, but he said he legit casted for like 100 movies, but they didn't use him when they started like filming. So you don't get the credit, but it's crazy, the whole process.
Yeah.
And production designers, everyone, they get like.
It's a huge process of like who's in the credits and how you credit. So technically when I was at Technicolor, my title was producer, but because there's actual producers for the production, you can't be titled that way. So they say, like DI producer, which is digital intermediate for like the color correction. And like sometimes it's changed to fit, what the network or the studio wants to see.
Yeah. So they want to make sure you don't get confused with the other
producers.
Yeah. So when did that start? When were you when was the first time you worked with Technicolor? Because that's like a huge deal, that company.
It was. They're over 100 years old, which is, it's just like steeped in history,
Yeah.
I started there in August of 2016. So almost, a month and a half after I moved back from San Francisco. And it was insane to walk through the halls and have all of those old one sheets, and they have like the old Technicolor cameras that, they would have used on Gone with the Wind. And to see all that and be like, wow, they hired me. But I started off in the theatrical marketing department. So basically finishing trailers. So I kind of, I have a production background, but I went from like kind of like creative vendor where you're cutting together the trailer to actually like going in and finishing the trailers. And it was a great experience. I caution anyone going into that, like over the age of 25, it may be a little bit difficult because of just the nature of how marketing runs for theatrical releases. It's, you're always a day late and $1 short, and, VFX are late and the director's upset last minute. And, I constantly kind of felt like I was in a room that was on fire and everyone's spraying gasoline and you're like, what are you doing? But I worked primarily on the 20th Century Fox account.
That's
so
awesome.
I did Logan and I did Kingsman Golden Circle, and just their big tent poles. Probably my favorite was Bad Times at the El Royale.
Yeah, that's what I wrote on here. That was one of the first things that I thought I saw. But then once you started talking, I remember like the animal shows. I'm like, oh yeah, but yeah, Bad Times. I think I watched that movie because you shared that you worked on it.
Yeah. And it was, it was just a great experience because very rarely do you have filmmakers that are collaborative and, everyone is even keeled.
Yeah.
And, they walk into the room and everybody kind of feels like family and, there's a give and take. And the DP Seamus was probably my favorite person by the end of it. He just had like the best attitude and, that brogue of his. And when he would call me in the morning, like, hi, can I come up and see the trailer before, Drew gets here? And I'm like, sure, why not? Come on up. It was just, we did a lot of work on that campaign, but it never felt difficult. And even when the hours were long and I'm still in a theater with the director at, 10 o'clock at night and I have deluxe, like, when are you guys sending it to us? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it just,
Wow.
it felt fine. But yeah, that's how I started at Technicolor. And then I transitioned into their episodic broadcast department to do TV shows and stuff for streaming. So it was basically taking my knowledge of finishing a trailer, which is, the smaller kind of chunk.
Yeah.
And bringing that knowledge to episodic and learning their workflow, because everyone is different in their own sense. But, your SEAL team that you're coming out with an episode every week is different from like a Netflix or HBO where they drop all the episodes. So it's, there's like a give and take and, a little bit of dancing that you have to do. But that was also a great experience. And, Big Little Lies was huge. And my cousins were like sending me screen grabs because they didn't know that I was working on it. And they're like, your name is in the credits of an HBO show. And I was like, I know. And like, it almost put me in the grave. But to work on stuff of that caliber is, I think what everybody works toward.
Yeah.
And it was definitely an interesting experience. It was hard and difficult at times, but I think getting through that made me a better producer. And then eventually I was splitting my time between the episodic department and theatrical. So then I was doing TV and movies.
Wow.
Just because, I always want to be an asset and I want to know, all the different intricacies of each workflow and the process and the systems behind it. And they were testing out the idea of having producers that could float and do both. And, not everybody wanted to, and it wasn't a requirement, but, I'm I'll do it.
Hell yeah.
Why not? Like, let's try. And if it crashes and burns, then we know that this isn't, the right thing to do as a company, but, at least we try. And, I enjoyed it. The pacing for the two things are very different. For a theatrical project, you have, months and maybe over a year, and everything is kind of spaced out. And then with episodic, you're way faster, which I think the marketing side of what I was doing made me able to kind of just touch and go between the two.
Yeah. So when it came to what was the process for like the trailers? Like you guys would all get together and be like, all right, like you would see these movies, right? So you'd watch these movies too?
Yeah. So on the creative side, when you're at a trailer house, you would get preview cuts of the movies. Sometimes if they didn't have a preview cut yet, they would send the script over to you. So you would read the script and kind of, obviously use your imagination and think of, all right, if I'm going to create a trailer off of just what I'm reading, I want to pull this dialogue, I want to pull these imageries. And essentially when you get the actual preview cut or whatever they're sending over to you, sometimes it's the dailies, and you go through and you cut everything together. And then what happens on the finishing side with, what Technicolor does is that trailer vendor will send you hopefully what the locked trailer is, and you rebuild it with all of the high resolution footage.
Oh, okay.
And it's all, camera native. So basically what happens after we build it is that it goes to a colorist and they apply, whatever LUT to it. They grade it to where it's supposed to be or where they think it's supposed to be. And then you have the filmmakers come in and you review it and you make the changes on the fly. And then somebody's like, all right, ship it. And then you start running all of the deliverables and then it goes out the door. And it's similar to episodic and, full movies for theatrical as well, where you're getting the offline from production editorial, you're rebuilding it, you're grading it, and then you're sending it out.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you're getting the dailies, which is pretty rad. But like, even if that's not available, so that's so cool. You're reading the script and you're like, wow, like visually, like, the way I'm seeing this, let me like highlight that because that'll be really cool to have in a trailer. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool process. And every time I, would explain to people, well, what do you do exactly? I felt like I had to start at the birth of Christ for them to actually understand where I'm like, all right, so anything that they're shooting on set are called dailies. And they don't use all of that stuff, but, they send it over. And that's why there's so many times where people are like, so there was this whole scene in the trailer that's not in the movie. And I'm like, yeah, that happens all the time.
No, it's true because you kind of sell yourself short if you're just like, I'm a trailer producer. You just say like the one thing. It's like people think of producer, I think, and they think something that isn't even close to what it is. So you have to mention like all the stuff that and there's a lot that goes into it. It's a long process, especially it's got to be even like you volunteered. You said nobody had to really do it, but it probably is pretty good because you have one that's like that long play, the theatrical. And then at the same time you have that, because I love that whole weekly thing. That's why growing up, I was obsessed with the whole system of like SNL. Like you go in on to, like there's no jokes yet. And then you're trying to figure it out. And it's kind of the same thing because in a week, or even shorter sometimes, I'm sure you're cutting stuff together, depending on how far in advance that they shoot it.
Yeah, I mean, some shows are definitely more buttoned up than others. I felt like SEAL Team was rinse, lather, repeat.
Yeah.
And the executive producer came in every Tuesday and signed off, and then we shipped it. And during that week, while we're working on, the episode that's going to air, say that Monday, we're also cutting together the next episode and getting that ready for the following Tuesday when he comes back to look at episode, 203. So it's definitely, there's so many steps in the process. And like you said, there are various types of producers. And I think that that's something that gets kind of overlooked, where it's like, you know, you have your producers that are on the production side, making sure that the movie is coming together. You have VFX producers that are making sure that the VFX are getting done on time. And you have me that's making sure that we're getting it built and color corrected, and we're calling out anything that might be wrong with it and getting it shipped over to the, you know, place that's wrapping the DCP or the broadcast network. So there's so many players.
Yeah. No, there's like a big process with it. So you said you went to school for like obviously this and screenwriting. So all this time, obviously you're working a lot because it's demanding. You're working a lot of hours.
Yeah.
So are you writing at all? Are you writing any like pilots?
I am writing. You know, there was a stint of time where what I was doing was so consuming that, you know, I was exhausted at a certain point, and I just like didn't have that like chutzpah to keep going, right? Where I was like, oh my God, that's like the last thing I want to do right now is sit down and write a screenplay. But I do have some in the works. And one of them that I hope to finish next year is a slasher film, but with a female lead, which I think will be kind of awesome.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely kind of picking up on that, which is really exciting. And now I've kind of structured my life to be able to do all of that writing while also working in post-production.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. And again, I don't know how long have you been doing, you know, like Nikki Nurtures? When did that come about and all that? It's really cool.
That came about in 2014, I think. You know, I kind of look at life as a constant journey of discovery and growth. And I had made, you know, a lot of shifts along the way of my time out here and who I was. And I felt like people were constantly asking me for advice, which is fine. Like, and that's great that like people are like, wow, you're like Buddha, like talk to me. And one of my friends was just like, you know, you should just start a blog and like see where it takes you. And, you know, I worked on it, and then like anything, sometimes like it kind of peters off. And I think in the last couple years, it, you know, became important to me. And I think especially now in the climate that, you know, the country is in, to kind of have that, you know, I know shit's bad, but like, let me tell you what I do when I'm having a bad day, or like how I've shifted my mindset to not really get lost in this sort of mucky stuff, but also just be real and go, you know, I have bad days where I don't get out of bed too. Like we're the same.
Yeah.
But, you know, at a certain point I go, okay, this is enough. And you get up and you wash your face and like you get work done, you go outside, you do your writing. And it is a huge passion project for me, and one that I feel like I can also kind of encompass into my writing, because I do so much kind of personal development writing and wanting to give people tools for a better life, because at a certain point I can give you all the advice in the world, but if you don't have the tool to actually do it yourself, then it doesn't mean anything. So this year and the downtime that I had because of COVID, I was like, you know what? It's the perfect opportunity to finish those journals that I was working on. And I've been writing a book that I'm hoping will be done in January called You're the Reason You're Miserable.
Oh, that's rad. Good for you.
And just kind of like a sassy guide to navigating life's shifts. And, you know, I was initially kind of like putting on my customer service voice, which I feel like a lot of people do. And then, you know, it was like maybe a month and a half ago I was writing and I was like, you know what? No, like I want somebody to feel like they're talking to their girlfriend from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I kind of like stripped that. I threw the F-bombs in that I wanted to throw in, and you know, it's coming along really nicely. And, you know, it's going to be just about everything that you could possibly go through in life, of like getting over childhood trauma and, you know, love that didn't work out, and being true to yourself, and it's how you get to where I am, where it's like, that courage to be like, I don't have a job and I don't really know anybody, but I'm just going to go and I'm going to trust it. And then meeting the universe halfway. Cause you can't be like, well, I want to be this, but you're not actually doing it.
Totally.
So then, that this year has just been about me like doing it and, not only giving it to other people, but proving it to myself that, I have good things to say. And if I can help one person, then Nikki Nurtures has succeeded.
Hell yeah. No, that's the mindset. I think that's what's so fascinating by all the stuff that you share. It's like so positive. It's so funny. Like, I don't know if you feel this way. Like me personally, like I look at myself like from God, even like a few years ago, 10 years ago, I'm like, man, I really wish somehow, again, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Maybe not with my wife, now with my daughter, but like the way I am mentally now, it is like, it's mind blowing. Like how mentally clear and how driven I am. Older, like going back to school, have a daughter, work from home, write, do this. Cause I love like exactly what you just said. Even if it's somebody that listens to one of these and they're like, man, I really want to do this, or man, that was really enjoyable. Or even the people I interview, like I told you, that guy was like, he had this experience where on Beastmaster 3 24 years ago, and just hearing him talk about it and seeing the look on his face, it was like the greatest thing. And I went inside and told my wife, I'm like, Jamie, this is like the most satisfying interview I ever did. I'm like, it's like the coolest thing about it. It's like, and that's what I love about the Girl Boss spotlights. So what made you start thinking about doing that?
I've grown to, I think that especially as women and, being younger and, I don't know if you remember the dynamics of our high school, but, just all of these girls competing with each other and, like who steals the guy and, all that sort of bullshit.
Yes.
And, sometimes that follows people into adult life. But for me and where I am now mentally, it was kind of like, there is room for everyone to succeed because all of our successes are going to be tailored to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And to our audiences. And I wanted to use my blog and that platform to kind of shine a light onto other girl bosses. And I feel like a lot of them are in the arena of kind of like the self-help personal development. And I specifically did that because I am not the end all be all of advice. And if you're like, oh, I'm not really jiving with Nikki, but she posted this person that, does coaching or whatever. And I actually really like her vibe. Then like, I've also succeeded because I've helped, two people find, what they need. And I've given, this person the platform and then this person the platform to find, exactly the advice that they were seeking. So, I try to do one once a week and I reach out to people on, Instagram that I find and sometimes Facebook or blogs so that I, come across and I'm just like, hey, I really like what you're doing. I do this Girl Boss Spotlight on my blog. I can send you the interview questions and, if you want to sing the praises of yourself and the business and like what you've created, like, let's do it. And, I post them and I put them on Facebook and I tweet and, whatever happens. But it was really important to me to, just give that spotlight to other people as well, because we're all trying to do good and we all do things differently. And, you might not resonate with what I'm saying, but, this girl over here says the same thing, but with different words. And then all of a sudden it sparks something in you. And like, that's what it's about.
And that's what it should be about. That's so great that you say that because there's other people that would be like, hey, listen to me. I'm the end all be all and don't check anybody else. But you're right. Sometimes you're like, hey, maybe it's not that, but at least you could still connect those people. And then at the same time, you're able to like kind of like pick the brain of other people sort of like in your realm. And that's pretty cool. And I think it's very, I love having a daughter and I didn't really want a son because I think that is like not like a job that I have, but in my head, I'm like, dude, I want her, especially nowadays. It's so different than even just the way we grew up. I want her to just be like so kick ass and so like just grab the world and just like do whatever she wants. Because I felt like us growing up, obviously I'm not a girl, but I just saw it in other people, and it's like so shitty the way the world is. But people like you and the people that you reach out to, like, you know, can help those people that might feel that sort of way and build them up, because you're super positive with a lot of the things you post and like empower people, which is so important.
Yeah. And it's important to me to not only empower, but to be real.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of my biggest pet peeves, and it's like kind of cringeworthy, is, again, it's not that it's wrong way of doing things, but like the people that post pictures of them crying or mid meltdown. And I understand that, you know, in that realm, it's very real and very raw, and you're going to write whatever you write under the picture. But for me, it's like, I would rather sit with whatever is bothering me, compose myself, understand why I'm having that emotional reaction, and then maybe either on Instagram or a lengthy blog say, I had this moment the other day where I was just like in the tub crying, like Hallmark movie style. And, this is what caused it. And this is kind of how I worked through it, because I feel like while the crying is very real, it's not necessarily helpful in what I look for. Where it's like, I would rather know that like you went through something terrible and came out the other side without actually needing to see the terrible thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to do the way that you would look at it. And I'm not saying those other people do it. Maybe they do feel that's the way they need to get their point across, like posting that photo and their blurb underneath. But it's good that you're doing something like that you believe in, because other people would be like, I'm doing this because these are going to get likes and like a certain reaction. Right. So you're helping those people that are kind of thinking the same way you do. So you're not a phony.
And everybody's different. And I'm sure that there are people that look at me that are like, well, she shits rainbows and that can't be real. And I'm like, but if you were actually reading what I was saying, you would know that is absolutely not true. Yeah. I'm a Scorpio. I go dark real quick. But yeah, it's just, the Nikki Nurtures thing it's fun, and it's, and it's not just an outlet for me, but a way to help other people. And I think that especially in these days, it's nice to see people doing all of the things that they love, because I feel like even growing up, it was like, you need to decide and you need to pick, and then you do it until you die. And I'm like, why? And I understand that maybe in years past that stability was helpful in a certain way. Relationship dynamics were a certain way because of the time. But now, like, you can do anything. And I tell people all the time, like, don't let somebody tell you that you lack direction. You're just multi-directional.
Yeah.
And then it's up to you to decide how you do all those things, and also decide what success means to you. Because somebody will look at you and be like, well, I mean, it's just a YouTube thing, but the amount of effort that goes into it, and, you have views and, you have followers and whatever, it's just like, okay, maybe to you that it's just like this whatever, but to the person doing it, it's something that they really love to do. And I'll never poo-poo that. I have lots of friends that do a plethora of things.
Yeah.
The key is to not get lost and keep jumping because you're looking for the golden ticket. It's like, do it because you love it, release the expectation of the outcome. So, I work in post-production. I'm constantly writing. I do Nikki Nurtures. I don't feel like I'm spinning. I'm very much going, okay, well, I'm going to do this here, and then I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do this here. And this is how I get to do everything that my soul is calling me to do.
Yeah. And then balance. I'm going to say two phrases that are like, make me sound like I'm trying to be hip, but like YOLO, it's so corny, but it is true. You only live once. Like, my birthday's coming up. So like, I always think, I forgot who said the quote. I'm sure it's been said a trillion times, but like, you have like the day you're born, the day you died, like on a tombstone. So it's like that dash. It's just like, that's all it is. And you have to like make that worth it. So I don't understand people that just like go through the motions, like at our age, like people that we know, not going to name any names, but it's just like, I couldn't imagine just like going through it. Like just like you said, structure, like boom, I'm doing this, boom, I'm doing that. And also like you said, the people are like, oh, it's just YouTube, or, oh, it's just blank. It's like, those people are just haters because they don't have they're afraid to like maybe either be their true self or just put themselves out there. And I appreciate anyone that does that, like any form of entertainment or writing, like anybody that is creative, arts. It is like so hard to do that. But when you do that, you almost feel like free.
You're literally the most vulnerable people because you're like, here's my baby, please don't judge it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to work through that, because I feel like there were points in my life where I was going through the motions, and that was when I was having like those most depressive states because I wasn't in alignment with who I am, and I was listening to the people around me telling me like, no, this is how you do life, until, one day you're like, no, fuck you, and I'm going to go like do it my way, and if it doesn't work, then I tried. But like, give yourself the opportunity to try and prove it to yourself.
That's exactly it. Because if you don't try, like you can't, there's no like repeats, you can't like do it over again. It's just like, it's just going to be it. So for that dash. So Nikki, what are the other books? So you have like, I think this is really rad. So you came up with this idea because this is really cool.
Yeah. So earlier in the summer, I self-published a cookbook because cooking is, one of my passions and something that I had folded into Nikki Nurtures because I was sharing recipes.
Yeah.
And it was, cooking was also the thing that kept me from murdering people, I felt like. And it's just such a huge part of like me growing up of, having that family that, the door was always open. You probably always had some sort of dinner guest that just showed up and they would pull up a chair, or the coffee's on, the Entenmann's cake would come out.
Nice.
And creating just kind of that, everybody's around the dinner table, and there's a lot of love in that. And there's a lot of love in cooking. Like you can't cook without love. Nobody's making hate sandwiches. Like it's not a thing, like if you could be mad at making the sandwich, but it's still because you love the person you're going to give it to.
That's great.
So I wanted, not just, my cookbook to come out, but also something for people to create their own. And it would be full of, your family's cherished recipes, or your friend's artichoke dip, or whatever it is, so that you have this keepsake and it wasn't the old school index cards.
Yeah.
And you could put it with all of your other cookbooks, and also something that eventually maybe you pass down, and everybody's name is in there of like, this is the recipe for chicken cacciatore from the kitchen of Aunt whatever. And then it kind of becomes a history for your family. That's cool. I designed it. I actually put it together like overnight. Like I couldn't sleep, and I was like, well, I guess I'm being called to do this right now. And I was up till like 6:00 in the morning, and I designed the whole thing, and then I published it a couple weeks later.
That's awesome. And then there's a few other ones on there. So what I'll do to make it easier, I'll just put all the links in the episode notes, and like whenever I share it and everything, and put your website and all your socials and everything. But
that's awesome. Thank you.
This has been so rad.
Yeah, this has been fantastic, and I'm glad that we could talk about like all the things,
Yeah. Nicole was really awesome. How amazing was that she dressed up because she saw in one of our reviews, I don't even know which one it was, that I dressed up, because it's fun to dress up for these things. Do 1 million people watch it? No. Close to 1 million? Yes. So it was cool that she dressed up like Freddy Krueger. If you're watching this, you saw it. If you're listening, she was dressed up like Freddy Krueger. So yeah, all of her links are in the notes so you can check it out. And don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.